Welcome back to Connecting Conversations. My name is Ivelka Powell and I'm your host. And as you can see, we're in a slightly different environment than we usually are. But we also have some fantastic guests with us today, which I'm so excited about. And I guess it's best to do introductions. I do have my co-host on the other side, Carla.
Still here, folks. Still here.
But for this special edition podcast, we really wanted to highlight conversations around finance and money and really have a different angle as to how we view money and how we look at it. So, Arlyne Joy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good for having us.
Great. Do you want to give our guests and our listeners kind of a background as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I can kick us off.
Feel free.
Arlyne Chinyanganya, founder of R.I.S to Froots, which is a company that supports people with managing their finances. And yeah, we've been on a mission to support people to better understand how to manage their finances. And I think a key topic is around different cultures, different traditions, which is great to be on this platform. So we'll get into that in a little bit. I'm also a qualified accountant, so also support business owners. Yeah. And we've got Joy. I'll let you kind of.
So my name is Joy Thompson. I work with Arlyne, mostly about operations, marketing, management. It's been a fun ride, actually.
Yeah.
And today, I really enjoy the theme because it not just helps people to see or hear about our experiences, but it also is in tune with money is a big deal. It's a major discussion in different households and different businesses. So I'm looking forward to the conversations and also how it will be very, very helpful to people listening in.
Yeah.
So let's go.
Love that. And for anyone who's seen some of my posts, I actually attended the Empower Her event around a month ago. So they did a fantastic job in putting on the event. Great speakers, great content. The vibe, the environment, the networking was top notch. So kudos to you ladies for that. That was a brilliant event. So I guess to kick us off, it'll be great to, start the conversation as to what is your relationship with money? What kind of upbringing did you have with money, and how did that impact your view when it comes to saving, for instance, investing or running a business?
Yeah, so in terms of relationship with money, it changes between the different stages. So earlier on, I guess if you think about when you're a student, first time outside the house and first time managing my own budget, paying rent. And that's when the first time I saw thousands of pounds in my bank account. And that there was a bit of a shock, I guess, because now I've got freedom. I can just, spend as I can. So that was a very interesting time, but I quickly realized that actually it can disappear as quickly. The more you So I think that's when I started to gain awareness in terms of saving and then thinking about paying off the key things first. Make sure that you've paid your landlord before you go and buy some clothes. But and then joining the workforce as well. Another time when it was really difficult to move from Leeds is where I grew up, and then I moved to London, and that's when I got a grad scheme. So the shock of how expensive London is, they tell you it is until you're there, and then it's like trying to manage the little that you have and make it stretch as far as possible. And I think that's when I started to get a little bit more conscious about the savings that you can try, like the deals that you can try and get, and going to certain places to buy food instead of going to Tesco's, maybe go to Aldi. So I think it's been a learning thing, but the relationship with money has always been to utilize it to support my life, rather than don't be used by money, but use money.
Yeah.
Is my kind of attitude.
That's great.
Yeah, that's really great.
So similar to Arlyne, I would say my background was very, very money conscious. So my parents were very on me about, you need to save. You need to save, you need to save. So I grew up always saving. When I got into the university, I was very conscious about funds. So I started a business with some of my friends, my colleagues, and even our mentor there taught us the 10-10-10, the 50, and the 50-30-20 rule, where we would save 10% for tithes, would save 10% for savings, and then 10% for gifts. And then on my own, I would have a 10% separate, like, I don't know I have that money, keep that aside. And then every other thing goes into whatever. But because I was living with my parents, I was able to save much more.
Yeah.
And before I was 16, I was able to get about $1 million dollars.
That's a great number in this conversation.
Not that. Naira into my account, and I was happy about that because I did it all on my own.
Yeah.
And then I got a fat bonus at work because I was always saving. I also got a fat bonus at work at the end of the year, which also contributed to the millions in my account, and I was happy about that. So continuing with the savings habits, I think we also my friends and I got involved in also buying stocks in different banks back home in Nigeria. And it was a great thing because later on in life, I needed that money to do a big thing. Yeah. And I had the funds to do it without having to ask anyone. I also grew up very independent because second-borns, you tend to be forgotten. You're the managers in the home. So everybody just leaves you to do what you need to do. And I'm like, okay, I'll fend for myself. But when I need big deal box, I'm going to come ask. So that was a great thing. So yeah, I was happy about being able to achieve that big goal with the funds I had without having to ask anyone for it. And even moving over here to the UK, it was a big deal for me. But my savings contributed, or myself and my husband contributed a lot to it. So I would say that a big deal, savings is very important. Yeah. And having that goal for what you want to use money for, you need to understand how you plan to save for it, which is kind of like the background or the backbone of where Roots to Fruits has been set up on, educating you on, you need to be able to like outline your goals. Yes. Do you need funds for them? How much do you need? And how do you plan to achieve those different goals with the funds you have? If you're not spending money right, we'll help you. Guy, you need to learn how to do this so you're able to achieve that goal, right? Yeah. So that's my background with money.
Yeah. I think everyone's background is so individual, and there's also like a unique aspect of your first relationship with money. Where did you get that from? That knowledge, that education? Because when we're younger, the first kind of exposure to money comes from our parents' relationship with money and how they manage their money and how they probably may not manage their money well, and you learn a lot of habits from that. I know in the Caribbean there is this kind of scarcity mindset whereby everyone is just like holding on to everything. It's just like, let's just save, but I think I spoke about this previously. There was a lot of keeping the money, but there wasn't a lot of investing the money and making money work for them. Exactly. And so you kind of get stuck when you're in a position where you have a kind of big thing or big project that you need to use that savings on, but you don't have like any backup or anything to follow on from that because you've just kept it whole. Some people I know back home used to stuff their money on the mattresses, and like it's not gonna gain any interest being on the mattress. In fact, you might lose $1 or $2. So it's so interesting how, like, even watching my parents' relationship with money, how that has impacted me both negatively and positively, because there were two people who had different kind of understanding as to what they wanted money for. So I think that was quite interesting when I was growing up. Col, I don't know if you have anything else.
I do. It's so interesting that you say that, because I think I probably relate more to yours. There was two different types of culture that was kind of in tension with each other. So I would say on probably my mother's side, she came from quite an entrepreneurial type of family. She tells me often of tales of my grandfather who would get, so this is in South Africa originally I'm from, and my grandfather used to own horses and would, my great grandfather would own horses. So this is her grandfather. And so he'd had loads of people working for him. But then he would get his workers to go and cut all the grass on one side. He would take that same grass, he'd come and pick them up later on. They'd roll up and then they'll go and sell that as hay to someone else. And that's just grass that's there. So the idea of like, being able to be entrepreneur, what can I use? And I'm sure you've heard the term, someone else's garbage is someone else's riches.
Yeah.
So things that people are negligent with or like don't see it as, or is discarded, he always had a way. She would also describe him as he would buy never just, we need tomatoes at home. He would buy a truck full of tomatoes. Because he will get more for his money when he sold them later on at profit. Yeah. That's the way that they thought. They never went to university. That wasn't an option for them in terms of the cultural climate and the kind of where they were. But that was something ingrained, and you hear that so much when she tells me the tales of her side of the family. I think from my father's side, very different. A lot of, from what I've seen, and certainly when he describes like, grandparents have now moved on and passed on, living from paycheck to paycheck and not seeing like actually where is stuff going to come from, and the sense sometimes of helplessness about this is just the way that life is. It could be different, it could be more, which is conflicting. So I think I heard from yourself and from you like similar things like I think maybe I've just been a bit more cautious with it because I'm not really sure what to do. But I've always been told, like, you need to always live within your means. You always have to budget. I don't think I ever really went mad at uni, seeing those thousands in the account. It's so funny to hear that. I'm just like, yeah, that was so true. Like, for the first time, so much money. But, like, I paid rent at home, even though I didn't live on campus. I paid for other things that my family needed. So very much like you use it to support family and you use it for where you're going. And education is an okay thing rather than spend. I still struggle to spend lots on myself. No, my husband would say differently. I find it difficult because he will still laugh at me. I'm like, oh, I feel terrible. I bought this one thing off Vinted. He's like, it was £5. Why
You can. That's another thing as well.
I'm happy to do it for other people, but not for yourself.
That's another part around like relationship with money, feeling guilty, spending it, and feeling like I need to, make sure that
every other person is fine.
Exactly. If you've saved, if you've, helped out your family, do all those things, put that in your budget or your plan, and then also have a pot for self-care. I think that is quite important because sometimes people think, okay, budgeting means that now I'm suffering. Now I can't spend my money. It's not fun at all. But you can budget for the things that are important to you. And when you were talking about kind of the culture that quite a lot of diaspora have is that they used to live in a world where we didn't have credit cards. You couldn't go get a loan. You had to maybe borrow from family members or yes, you had to save, and by saving you're putting it in a pot and that pot is in the kitchen somewhere.
Or under the bed.
Guys, this is so bad. So bad.
Well, that's true.
There's no ledger or there's no accounts that can show you what is actually going on. Therefore, people aren't there counting their money and making sure that it grows. Whereas now, people moved to the UK, for example, because that's where we're based, and then we've got all these tools, all this information, and I think quite a lot of people got overloaded and that information didn't get passed down to the kids is where I am at now. And it's like now educating each other on where we are and the opportunities that are available.
And just even talking about that shift into the UK and I guess the more technologically advanced world, I've heard people who are older say, I don't do online banking. And I'm just like, there's going to be a day when there's no physical banks. So we need to keep up with the times a little bit. But it's that fear of, if I put my money where I don't see it, what's going to happen? It's that kind of visibility aspect of seeing your money.
Or like 2008 crash. Maybe we were a bit not quite old enough to really feel the
Yeah.
effects.
I was definitely old
So-
enough. I was old enough. to
So
feel-
there's a little bit of mistrust of like, okay, my
Yeah.
money definitely can disappear, but I guess there's loads of things that have been put in place now. There's guarantees up to a certain level, like you will get your money back up to a certain amount. I think it was like 80k. I'm not sure at the top of my head, but yeah, there's loads of things that would have happened in our past as well that can make us distrust.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that you said that about what happened in that period of time with the crash, because I think my grandmother, who's still very much alive, and I think she's of the old school mindset of like, if I can see it, then I feel better. She doesn't just always she would just never just put it in one space. And literally when the crash and everybody's pensions disappeared and things like that, she's like, see,
I told you.
and we're like, maybe is there like, and I love what you said, like, we've now put in mitigating things. So I'm just like, we cannot really rely on man-made systems all the time in kind of like, yes, digital this and that, but it could go tomorrow. Like in COVID, all of our choices of what we could do with our money also disappeared anyway. People lost their jobs. What they thought was like, this is the job for life that's going to keep me financially secure, also went. So that concept about like, where kind of like our forefathers, grandparents, great-grandparents, that we keep it together and we figure out how to do that. Is there still some value in that, as well as combining, like you said, like we need to be mindful, educated, and have the financial intelligence of how to operate in a way that keeps you prosperous and not like, I'm dying at the mercy of what, like I need my money to be used this way and I can't really live. And that's the balance that I think we're en route to finding. This is the generation, I think, is for the first time like, well, do I need to do that? Whereas beforehand, I can't really recall that many people having all of those conversations necessarily at home.
I would say the mindset also contributes to it a lot, because if you don't build that mindset to understand, what do I do with money? How does money contribute to the decisions I'm going to make today, tomorrow, in the future? It'll kind of like, I'm still there in that loop where I'm just spending, tomorrow will take care of itself, but that's not how it's supposed to be, right? So one major thing I would say, digging back into like my experience, would be that we did that at the beginning of every year, that goal setting period where you like outline what your goals are for the year. Do I need this amount of funds to achieve this particular kind of goal, and give it milestones? So I say this because I do it actually, or I've been doing it for a long time, and it's helped me. So it's not always about writing it down. You write it down, but you also have to keep telling yourself, I'm doing this because I want to achieve this goal. So it's kind of like keeping the focus where it should be until you achieve that goal.
That's good.
And yes, I know goals change. They develop, they improve, they actually sometimes scale down. But you also have to follow it, because you need to also know, what do I need money for and when? And like Arlyne said earlier, family things are going to get in the way as well. You also have to have that, should I say, room to expand.
That flexibility, adaptability.
To also be able to take care of things that you're not seeing coming. They just get thrown at you like, okay. Hold up here. I have to do this.
Life changes, and so we need to be able to accommodate for those shifts that happen in life. It's, and I think when people goal set, they get so fixated on the goal that they don't give themselves room to actually explore or have room for, like what you said, for those unpredictabilities in life, that gets thrown at you at the door, and you're just like, oh crap, how am I gonna manage? And it's okay. I think some people get so, I guess, confined in the fact that, oh my gosh, I don't have it, and then they get anxiety, they worry, and it's just like, it's okay if it doesn't look the way in which you planned, but that doesn't mean you can't start over and make a new plan based on new information you may have received, or new experiences, or maybe a new lifestyle. When I was living with my mom, it was great because I was saving like loads of money. I was just like, this is brilliant. And then I decided, actually, I love living with my mom, but I also I want to live on my own. I want to have that freedom, that flexibility to do what I need to do. And I was in that stage of my life where I just needed to, take take some separation and, you know, go in my solitude place, as I call it.
Independence.
My independence, and really thrive on my own. And that incur a lot of financial costs. And it wasn't the plan, like, initially. But due to how I was feeling and other circumstances, I was just like, you know, maybe it is the time for me to, you know, leave the nest, as they say, and do things on my own. And then I had to rethink, okay, financially, how is this going to work within my budget? And I think some people would probably be so fearful of making a move because they think that they have to do everything step by step. When not necessarily. And I think, you know, even in that space, I could say, yes, my, you know, expensive has increased, but how, like, what am I doing to make additional money?
I'm hearing a lot of mindset change going on there. Like, there's a lot of processing that was going on there. And then you have to tell yourself in your head, like, I want to achieve this. And if it's okay if it doesn't go the way I had planned it, I could always replan and go back on track again. So I think that's one major information many people, and I would say maybe also young people, need to have, because if you don't build that right mindset, you're not able to stay focused on a goal, even try to even develop when the goal is developing and changing, right? You'll be a bit like, I don't know what to do here. You have that anxiety, you're unsure, you make wrong decisions, and it'll take you to a bad or wrong place.
So I think it's just so important that we remain flexible. You know, life isn't linear, it's quite fluid. So how do we, you know, invite new things in? So like as I was saying, it was just like, okay, how can I make more money in a situation where my finances has increased? What can I do to bring additional money in? And those are the things that you can think about. And yes, it might seem like for a time, oh my gosh, I'm just working, I'm doing all these things, but the way I see it, and everyone says, oh my gosh, Ivelka, you're doing so much. And I'm just like, I'm doing so much now because I want to chill in like 20, 30 years time. I'm not going to be doing this forever. And I think that's another thing about money. People are so short-term minded and they don't think about the long term.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just thinking about right now, a few clients are now in the 55 to 65 age range, and we're having certain conversations about retirement. And it's such a huge life thing, you know, like where you'd never really see yourself. We want to retire until you're about to retire and you're like, oh my God, actually my identity is about to shift. My income is going to go down. Unless if you have been planning, you know, 20, 30 years ahead by having a pension, by having a different savings plan that's for long term. But now what we're finding is that they're now putting in a plan that is in the next 10 years, how much do I need to save? And it's more aggressive. And now they need to scale down in terms of how much they spend to be able to save enough for that retirement period. And you don't think about that.
You know, it's so funny you say that, because I was actually having a conversation with someone, just a random person, one day, and they told me, I don't even know how the conversation about money came up, but they were just like, I wish I saved at least £10 a month when I was younger, because he's now like lean towards his retirement age. And then he was just like, if only I really thought about it then, if I just saved £10, and bearing in mind he's of the older generation, £10 back then, you know, is a lot more now. And he said, if only I just saved £10 back then every month, I would have been in a much better position than I am now. And when he said that, I literally went in a little bit of a panic, and I'm just like oh, those first years of my employment, I was just like, opt out of pension scheme, opt out. I want to I'm just like, oh, I can think about this. But now when he said, I went in a little bit of a panic, and I'm just like, yeah, those first couple of years of employment, I could have actually...
But no, don't panic. That's not the point, right? It's more like, okay, what can I do now?
Exactly. And
And like Joy mentioned the 10%, right? In terms of having that 50, 30, 20. Have something. He said £10. Honestly, if you put just £50, which is meant to be like £50 per month for the next 10 years, you know, that would get you a lot more than, oh, okay, I need to put away £300 now. If you just start saving just a little bit towards that kind of retirement plan, and don't think about it, just set up a standing order. It goes to like a pot elsewhere, and that's it. That you never touch it. It just carries on. And that's I think that's what he means. Just that little bit would have made a huge difference.
And it's just so important. I think when we think of saving, we think, oh my gosh, I have to put like hundreds of pounds away or hundreds of dollars away. And it's just sometimes those incremental like pots of money, whether it's 5 or 10, you know, you don't have to stretch yourself, but people think, oh, it's not gonna really add up. Things add up.
They do. And just to add to that, there's this saying that what do you have in your hand? Use what you have in your hand. And if you're able to use it well, you get more, right? So for like businesses, moving like into businesses, investors want to see what you've done with the little you had or you have. And if they're able to see she's done this much and she has a plan to increase to this in the next 5 years, they're looking to say, okay, I could take a chance on her, right? So it's back into like going into the individual's side of things. What have you done with the little you have? And how have you scaled with that? So I've been able to achieve this amount of things with the little I have, and I want to achieve this big thing. Because you've scaled through this, it's easier for you to scale through the bigger deals on your plate, right? And then moving into having fun with money, for crying out loud. We're not supposed to work. Like you said, I'm doing all this so I can chill, right? Arlyne was on a vacation a few weeks ago. And I'm like, girl, how did you do this? All of us, like, I'm here working and you're on vacation. But she has put in the work. She has planned it. And she's able to take a 4-day trip to somewhere in the world. And I'm like, girl, I'm jealous. But I started thinking about, I'm like, you put in that amount of work. Money's supposed to work for you. Right? And you're able to spend and have fun. So put in that work, but also take yourself out on a date or a trip, whatever it is. Let the money also work for you. Like you said, have that pot where you have the me time, self-care, let myself relax, and then go back again into working. Let the money keep working for you. So I see it as a give and take. You're able to put in all that work, save, do everything you can. And like she said, I love that. I love it a lot. Live within your means. Many people end up getting into bad money decisions because they don't live within their means. First thing you see on Instagram, let's buy it. TikTok, let's buy it. It's fun. It's nice.
And it's because it's
therapy.
immediate.
It's good therapy sometimes.
Sometimes.
But then again, if it's out of your means, it'll hurt that particular goal in future because you're not able to reach it because you're short on funds and you're not spending the right way. So spend the money, make the money, but still have fun.
There should be a balance.
Exactly.
And there's a balance with everything in life. But that brings me on to kind of the whole gender debate about whether women are, I guess, more fearful with money than men, or more strategic with money than men. You know, there are some debates. More cautious. You know, even when it comes to pricing in a business, some men would be like, well,
we go on price.
we can tell you the highest. Women are like, maybe let's give them a minimum. Like, how have you heard that debate, or what are your thoughts around the whole relationship with money between men and women?
There's different feelings.
Everybody's laughing already. You just know what's
This
coming.
is a hot topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I felt the pause.
Big pause. Indeed.
Because there's different areas that you can think about. Because
Yeah.
there's the
Yeah.
investing. There's loads of studies around like
Yes.
investing, how less women actually invest because they don't feel confident, or they feel like, I don't know where to go, what to invest in. And then there's the just managing money. I believe there's a survey 4 years ago where 33% of women said that I'm not confident managing money, but then they were asked a certain question, but they got it right. So actually they know what to do. You know, it was like a mathematical type question about your bills, and they got it right. So, but then they don't feel confident, but their knowledge is there.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between how you feel, and actually if you had to do it, you'd figure it out.
Yeah.
So there's lots to touch on in terms of like the culture, and in terms of like your place as a woman and a man maybe in a household who looks after what. But I've actually seen a huge shift in people my age, where quite a lot of my friends are the ones that, like the women, they're the ones that look after the household budget because they feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And then their husbands are like, yeah, no, she gets it. And then they sit down and they talk about it.
Yeah.
But I do have some friends that feel like, oh no, yeah, he manages that, he pays for everything, so it's up to him. So there's different views, and I think it's hard to generalize without. But then we've got those statistics though to base them on. So I don't know around investments how everyone feels about.
But I
that.
like the fact that it's a debate, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say the women. Well, touching on what Arlyne said, right? So the women, we tend to like handle a lot of things in the house. So you manage a lot of things in the house on the home front, and you don't know you're actually developing those skills, negotiating skills, wanting to get more out of little amount you're spending.
Yep.
Right? So you're also like developing some kind of skills. And for the guys, like we're saying, it's a debate. When it comes to like investing in businesses, so like talking about big figures,
Yes.
there's also that statistics where you're seeing they think about other things. You're thinking about 4 or 5 years into it to say how much can she do, and how she's promising me she's going to achieve this amount of money. They're already thinking about the behind the scenes about what happens. And they've been on the forefront of doing this for different businesses. So they're coming from that experience. So in terms of like on the investment side of things, they may be winning that battle. But majorly, so I'm going to give an example. So we went to eat at Lola's at Slough. And we went in there, and the guy was very nice guy. And it was our first time there, and he asked the question. I can't remember what the question was. Yeah, so we had ordered our food, and then he was asking about drinks. I'm like, we haven't tasted your coffee. If it's going to be on the house, fine, feel free, we'll take the coffee. And he's like, sure, you're first timers. You guys will get the free coffee. I was like, okay. Nice. If I didn't make that comment about... We've never tasted your coffee. If it's going to be on the house, I just took a chance and just a friendly chat. And then he said, fine, on the house. I was like, okay. But many times you feel you don't get it because you don't ask for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And because women have always been in that position to listen to other people, they're thinking about other ways to get what they want out of you before you even say it. And it's kind of like a subconscious thing. Yeah, so I would say we are winning that battle on that side. So,
I think it's so interesting. And, you know, we're just generalizing here, you know. I know there are a lot of nuances when it comes to how both men and women kind of work with money or their relationship with money. But historically, we've seen that men were the breadwinners and women would be at home, and you know, in some countries women weren't allowed to work, so where were the income coming from? And you know, there's that historical context and backdrop that we've seen. And I guess when
you couldn't even buy a house on your own without your dad or your husband, and then you're going to open a bank account. I think in this country until is it the 60s or the 50s?
Really?
Yeah, so it's not that long ago.
So I think with all of that happening, you know, I guess women, I think confidence is a key word here, because we do have the knowledge, we do have the skill set, but it's the confidence to actually execute it and ask for more. for us, we just kind of accept
Yeah,
what's there.
What's there?
Without having to be like, actually, I demand more because I have, done this X amount of output or so on and so forth. But Carla, what are your thoughts? I'm keen. You were over there laughing in the corner, and then all of a sudden you like silence.
I love what you said, because literally that took the word out of kind of what I wanted to contribute next. Was like, there is clearly an issue. It's not about skill set. It's not about ability or capacity.
No.
This is everything to do about confidence and self-perception. And we are very much, as you already highlighted, Arlyne, in, I would say, still early seedling stages of emerging from thousands of years of a system of working one way in terms of our place in society as women, to emerging into something you can stand on your own, fully fledged. It doesn't, and I think this is where we also get into extremes, because what we've also got is some pendulum swings. I'm so independent, and we haven't learned the art of actually nobody gets anywhere successfully without support going forward. What does that look like in good balance? And I don't even like to say the word balance, probably harmony rather than balance, because balance always indicates that potentially something has to go, whereas harmony, there's just a time and a space where it will all work together. But as women, like, trying to figure what that looks like for us is difficult, and depending on, again, the cultural backdrop that you start with. So what's the grassroots that you're coming from, no pun intended, but like, honestly, what's the soil in which you've been forged, because that's going to look different from, we're all going to have challenges, I think, as women. It's just the way that the world looks right now. But what that's going to look like for one woman coming from one cultural background or one particular setup from their background to another will vary greatly. And I love that we've already prefaced, generalizations. But if we are to, like, the overarching thing is that women already, there is a very different approach that we all have to make adjustments or step into something new that we weren't either entitled to before, or we weren't raised to believe that actually we could occupy space there. And for me, that's a huge challenge, because I agree with you. I'm just like, a lot of the time, this is new space for me, being in the entrepreneur space. When we started Cohesia Connect, I'm from the background, like, you study, African background, you study, you go to school, and then you have options, and automatically this is attached to some kind of security or financial remuneration. We've seen the world does not work like that. I was in teaching for 6 years, not very long, but I'd studied for, like, I have 3 degrees. That's crazy, but I'm not sitting here really, like, loaded. I'm not. But in the same way that I was taught, like, you will be this role as a professional, and then automatically it's attached to a certain lifestyle, and that's not true. And to think about, we're talking about living in your means. When you're on a teacher salary, and I'll go there, that's very different to business, corporate, where you can look at very larger numbers, and there's more scope in terms of what that can look like. If you're in the public sector here, certainly in the UK, on a teacher salary, is like, there is only so far you will go. And again, that is capped by, you will get to this level in 10 years time. I think I remember when I was in my first year of teaching, and my NQT colleague who was with me, she said she had left corporate, and a lot of women do, again, because they think this is going to help them now that they're in the season of being parents. This will help me out with managing childcare and when my children are on holiday, which actually isn't quite true, because if we to look at statistically speaking, they still spend more time working outside of hours than they do in school, and they're getting paid less than the average wage. And she said, if I was to, in order to get to my first year salary in corporate, I'd need to be working in this job for 10 years. So, like, that whole thing about you work within your means is one thing, but it's just like, how do you break that? That's not a cultural background, personality. Okay, there is a culture. That's a specific career culture environment that is, trained people that this is what your trajectory is going to look like. But then there's also just, like, women are like, well, what can I do? Like, I also want to take care of my family, and one of us has to do that. And we're in an era, as you said, Arlyne, where there is a togetherness about, like, how do we plan this together? I'm comfortable that your strengths lie in budgeting. It's not mine. I'm grateful that my husband is very smart like that, and his parents raised him like that. But this is new turf for me to learn. And it's a big adjustment. And I'm just sitting, even in the entrepreneurial space that we're navigating now, is, okay, I'm not used to dealing with, how do I make that decision? What other options are there? Like, all I think about is within my means. But we're in a generation, like, you need to look beyond your means. What are the other avenues that you can incorporate? And I genuinely and honestly will hold my hands up and say, that is confidence to learn that I don't have in abundance at all. It's frightening space. I feel like I said a lot there, but
Yeah, no, and one of the big things that I wanted to then touch on from what you're saying is how a lot of people are feeling right now, especially having been told that go to university, after uni, you get your job, you're going to earn enough to be able to live, in a role that you're professionally trained,
Yeah.
Yes.
which is different to, okay, I just went and then worked in, in a different kind of, like, okay, I went and worked in a shop, for example. What we were told isn't what's the reality now.
Exactly.
Hence why quite a lot of people, and women actually, then set up businesses because we're chasing that freedom. We're chasing that financial freedom. And then we feel like, okay, this is a space that I have no idea how to navigate.
For sure.
So that's the feeling. But what's positive is that there's these spaces where you get to network.
Yes.
There are other women that want to give back. Maybe they've been experiencing for 5 years and they're like, okay, I learned these, 3 key things and I want to pass them on. So I think maybe just leaning into those communities.
Yeah.
There's so many like accelerator programs or networking events or just, online as well. Get in the comment section for certain like videos. Then you can find your people so you can learn from them. But yeah, there's a massive thing where we've all like taken off the glasses and we're seeing really like, okay, reality is a lot tougher than we thought it's going to be.
If I could add to that, right, I like how she pointed out like the different things, because there are other people that are also sitting in these shoes. They are not sure, they are very not clear on how to make that particular decision or those different decisions in terms of maybe being an entrepreneur or even money decisions and stuff like that. So for me, what I would recommend, because I guess that's what really helped me, was being around people that know how to do those kind of things. And it's not just having a mentor, but having other people that give you a second perspective to it. So you want second opinion. So Arlyne told me this, and I want to hear from Ivelka, or I want to hear from Carla. How did she handle this situation? I'm asking questions. One major thing I used to do a lot, and I still do, it's LinkedIn is my go-to.
Yes, everybody's go-to now.
And it's not just because I'm looking to see or to find a job or whatever. I'm wanting to see, okay, this is what this person said about this. Another person said it in a different way, but it's the same principle, right? And a big deal for me is networking. So I'm very big, or I've always been big about going to events.
That's how I met Joy.
I'm very big about going to events, right? And my mentor, when we started the company, Ivan Digital and Legalpedia, would go to one event a year in the US. And it scaled up to 2 events, scaled up to 3 events. And it was a blessing. And I would say that because it kind of like opened my mind up to making business decisions or even making personal decisions for myself. What works for me will not work for you. And I could give you my experience, because tomorrow you may find yourself in my shoes and you kind of know what to do. But because we're not in the same space, you already have that background to say, okay, Joy did it this way. Or I read this, or I heard this person say this. So one critical thing I would say in these situations where you have to learn new things, or you are in a different frontier trying to like assimilate what's going on around you, and it's kind of frightening. I would say, let me be positive, it's challenging. Right? But because challenges are meant to be overcome. So it's challenging, but one thing is have that open mind to say, I want to make it work. I want to find a solution. And then go around like ask her questions. Like I ask Arlyne tons of questions. I pull out stuff like, girl, you have this information, give it out. I need it. Others need it as well. Like so ask questions, go to places where you know that they'll be talking about those kind of things. Events, or just generally, I'm sorry, I ask the stupidest, the littlest questions as much as possible, because you are asking that little, but somebody's happy to give you that much, right? So because you have that, so people that are able to tell me I'm scared about doing this, meaning that they are wanting to learn. They actually, there's a thirst there that you want to, that they are looking for someone to help with. So being open with it is like you've already solved that problem. You've put it out there and you're calling for answers. So there are a lot of people in the room, or people on air listening and saying, oh, that's me, I'm actually wanting to. So my two bits would be around people that know the answers to these things,
Yeah.
and also be open to learning, because everyone, or you'd be surprised at the amount of people that are wanting to give you the answers that you're looking for.
Yeah. And there is this saying that is quite biblical: ask and you shall receive.
Exactly.
And whilst that is from more of a religious perspective, even when we look at from a societal, we can see when we do ask for things, like you rightly said, there are people there who are willing to do it, and if you don't ask, no one's gonna know, because like it's just gonna stay in your head. You can't just assume someone's gonna know you need this grant or this funding or this investment or access to this room. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be vulnerable, and I know a lot of people are afraid to be vulnerable, especially with their finances. It's very much like you can't know how much I spend, or you can't know how much I'm charging, or so, and it's just like we need to be a little bit more vulnerable when it comes to things like this, because you don't know who's on the other side, who's willing to give you whatever you desire or want in order to make your goal work or business work for you. So
just to point out there, right? So I know, people are a bit closed up when it comes to, you can know how much I spend or what I'm paying for this. When you make those bad decisions, it's going to be out there. That's just the truth about stuff, And so for me, I think I would say asking the right people. So it will be you also having that go-to person or go-to set of people. And I would say in a smart way doing it, because you're wanting to get the information. Arlyne doesn't need to know why I'm trying to get that information. She just needs to know I want that information. And I'll do what I need to get, do what I need to do to get that information, right?
So, there's a skill, a slight skill that you have to do.
And I know people may not have that skill as well, but being open with the issue gives you the information that you need to solve that problem that no one knows about.
And most people want to help.
Yeah.
Most people are trustworthy. Most people are. It's just trying to find those people and let them help you.
And I guess switching slightly, doing a slight detour, but still connected, is around morals and money. And I think there's a lot of trustworthy people, but then there is people that aren't so trustworthy. And recently we've seen like frauds and scamming happening a lot more frequent. I am gonna be vulnerable here and put my hand up. I've been scammed twice. Once was I was at uni, and my funds, when we talk about uni, a lot of money coming in, a lot of money went out. And I literally remember crying. I was devastated. I think, and it was the second year of uni, and I was having a tough time just navigating uni at the time, and dealing with friendships and, workload, and then having to deal with this financial issue. Like, literally, I crushed. I was absolutely crushed. And then the second time was, funnily enough, during COVID. Me and my ex-partner, we put some money down for a place, and again, it was like hundreds of pounds, close to the thousands. And we were like, this again.
Such a violation, isn't it?
It's such a violation. So, there are a lot of people out there who are making money work for the good, but then there's also people that are quite horrible and quite selfish when it comes to money, where they're happy to steal it and use it for their own benefit, and disadvantage those that perhaps don't have I guess the right security measures in place or knowledge.
Or just vulnerable.
Yeah.
We're just vulnerable.
Because I remember the first time when it happened at uni, I went to the bank and I said, I was scammed and so on and so forth. And the first thing the lady said to me, she was just like, well, you were being silly.
Ouch.
And I'm just like,
no.
I was a uni student. Like, the last thing I'm thinking about is like
reprimanding me.
Yeah.
And then there's this woman, this cashier or whatever she was, and she was just like, well, you were just being silly. Like, you should have known better. And the first thing that came to my mind, like, there was no one or nothing at the time that told me when I started uni that there will be these people who would want to steal my money.
Yeah.
And there was no education around me how to protect my money, or, you know, when I receive certain phone calls, what precautions. And now there's a lot more
yeah.
a lot more information now,
Yeah.
thankfully. But at the time, I didn't even know like scammers was a real thing.
Yeah.
And thankfully, there's a lot more training for like those sort
Staff,
of institutions,
yeah.
for banks, in terms of like fraud is real, and they're at the front line in terms of seeing how many people are affected.
Yeah.
And thankfully, as you said, there's loads of resources in terms of where to kind of learn how to spot certain things,
Yeah.
and also I believe most banks have a phone line where if you feel like, I don't know if I trust this, you can speak to someone before going ahead and doing that.
Yeah.
But then there's the other end that you were just saying, where it's like you're scammed without even knowing that I've just got scammed, and then now you have to deal with it, and it could affect your credit score if you can't pay back something, which are all real consequences, and it's hard to avoid, but there's so much information if it happens to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. So it was such a crazy thing at the time, and I'm just like, this is horrible. And then when it happened a second time, I was just like, okay, it can't happen a third time now.
But like, what did you learn from it in terms of getting out of it, or like how to avoid it? What can you say you learned?
I think from the experience of both, I definitely learned you know, how to decipher when I'm receiving a phone call, or how even to decipher people who are asking for money. And I've learned now that there are different kind of cues that you can pick up on when people are saying that your bank has been someone's using your bank account elsewhere, and, you know, having that precaution, because one thing with scammers and fraud is that they capitalize on fear.
And urgency.
So I was like, okay, maybe if I take a step back first and analyze the situation instead of acting out of fear, then I'll be able to make a more informed decision as to what happens next. So that's something I've definitely learned throughout those experiences. But also, always having a backup. I never have all my money in one account. I have, you know, a number of different accounts, and I split up my money according to those accounts. So I know if for whatever reason something goes wrong with one account, I know I have, you know, a safeguard there for me. But also, and thirdly, is, you know, speaking to my bank. Like, when I first got scammed, I didn't get anything back from the bank. It was a horrible experience with that bank, and I won't call the bank's name, but I would never bank with them ever again because of that experience. Now I think they're a lot better. But for me, it's like building that relationship with my bank account, and, you know, learning about their safeguarding procedures and fraud. I know one of my banks, they say, you know, if you were to ever receive a call, you can put the number in the app and check to see if that's from them. And I was just like, oh, that's quite cool, and that's quite an interesting feature. And it's now something I don't overlook when I look at different bank accounts. Like, so I think even like understanding my bank account's procedures a lot more when it comes to that situation, I don't take that for granted now. So those are probably the three things that I've learned.
Just to contribute to what Ivelka said. So yes, I've been a victim of scammers. Yeah. I would say, so what I learned basically is, like she said, taking a step back. So for me, it was two things. The urgency. They're like, do this immediately. And I'm like, when I took a step back next time, I was like, do I really need this now? Why are you pressuring me to do it? Take that action. I need to be able to decide when and where I want to spend my money. So I like calm down, like, no.
Yeah.
And then later on, I realized that was actually a scam, because 1 and 2 and 3 didn't add up.
Yeah.
It makes sense, right? Which, yes, she shouldn't have said, but yeah, when I think back to what the lady said to you, it's kind of like, you didn't think through it before you actually made that decision. Because if you did, right? So I had to tell myself, like, reprimand myself basically, like, Joy, you made a stupid decision right there.
Yeah.
And that's why they got your money out of you and gave you a shitty product, right? So looking back, I think another thing I would say was what I learned from it was resilience. I was able to bounce back to say, yes, I lost the money, but I told myself I'm more educated now.
Yeah.
Not to make that decision anymore. So these are like, I gave myself the pointers or the lessons to say 1 and 2 and 3. Once it doesn't add up, I'm sorry, I'm not going with that. And I don't want you pressuring me to make a decision when it doesn't come from me.
Yeah.
I don't want it to come from you, because I'm the one spending money here. I'm the one making the decision. It's going to affect my life tomorrow, not you.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah, it's so important. And I think it's, you know, there's an act, you have to enact due diligence in situations when it comes to money, because yes, money, you know, allows us to access a lot of things, but we also have to learn to, you know, be wise and be conscious as to how.
And when it's too good to be true,
yes,
you run.
You just like
There's so
something
many,
not right.
like, during the pandemic and after.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
Within, you know, like group chats. I don't know how many family group chats you have, but I have so many. And like, at least 2 of them had kind of, oh, I've just found this out. So it's a family member. I think it's them being misinformed, and then they're saying, oh, I've heard this, it's worked for my friend, let's all invest in it.
Oh no.
All you can do is just put in 100, but if everyone in the group chat puts in £100, then,
that's a lot
you know,
of
we
money.
can invest, I don't know, X amount. So it's like, no, I'm gonna like take a step back, because most people, if you're a victim of fraud, the person that introduced you to it is someone that you actually know. I'm not saying that they scammed you, but that's how you can easily walk into a situation.
yeah, that's
I just wanted to go back as well. Also, like, we're talking about, like, if it's too good to be true, and again, this is still coming from good places of what we've been speaking about today in terms of how do I find that financial freedom, or to get into a good place with wealth. And I think this goes back to, where does the morals versus the money go into? Just like, I think there's a lot of tension sometimes in terms of, when do we get into the point where, like, it's okay to desire success without it getting into, now I've just become greedy, and then that comes with a whole load of other things. And we've mentioned already senses of religious perspectives on what should I be what should be my approach towards money, and you've mentioned tithing before, and we're talking about, like, we are supposed to be stewarding things well, and I think if we're going to go down that route, there is certainly a biblical Christian perspective about, there's a parable of the master and the talents, and he gives a piece to every person. What do you do with it? And this goes back to what you mentioned earlier about, like, what have you got? And this is what investors are going to look like. But I think that there's a bit of a clash, and I don't know if you'll say that you feel it too, a bit of a tension about, certainly as women, but just in general, like, how much is too much, and are we allowed to go for it, you know? And I'll be interested to know, it's kind of segueing off what you said, but it's still in the morals kind of area of, like, what should approaches be. I'd love to hear just some of your thoughts about it, because I know that there is some very conservative, reserved perspectives of others that were like, I'm uncomfortable to be that successful, that will make me feel like I'm not okay with that. But actually, why are we contented with more poverty side than actually getting financial freedom for our children and our children's children and our family, if we can?
and on that note as well, it's just like, there was this thing my mom used to say growing up, is like, you know, money is the root of all evil, and I'm just like, and you kind of grow up with that mentality, and I'm just like, and as I grew up, and, you know, and I think that comes back to the whole cultural upbringing, and, you know, the relationship with money, and the lack of knowledge, and possibly resulting in me being scammed, who knows? But it's just like, growing up with that fear of, oh, maybe I shouldn't be all about money, and, you know, money's not the most important thing, and, you know, I should be a little bit more conservative with money, because it was perceived to be quite sinful to have a lot of money and be successful. And as I've got older and been exposed to numerous people, and, you know, some wealthy people, it's just like, actually, I do like a little bit of money, and maybe not just a little bit, maybe a lot. And I do want to have a lot of money. I want those bank accounts to be 0, 0, 0s. So it's just like, where do we find that harmony? And I love that word that you used earlier. Where do we find that harmony in having a lot of money and not going to the greedy side, where we perhaps see some of those people like scammers and fraudsters slipping
or
into,
it just becomes obsessive.
or obsessive.
Yeah. And we're selling our soul to it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
There's so much to touch on.
I'm so
myself as well. But I'll just start with the first thing that I was just thinking when you were speaking, Evoka, in terms of, I think we need to think about what we can do with money as well. So with the relationship with money, yes, you should also be able to live. So Carla, as you were saying, it's hard to think, okay, where are my morals? I've got integrity. I want to help people. So with Roots to Fruits, we started off, it was free. We're just jumping on a call. And then it took a couple of years to start to think, how can this be a commercial business? And actually, I feel like Joy has really helped with like thinking, for it to survive, for it to grow, then we need a certain amount of revenue. It's not to just think about you. You also need to live comfortably, because you're pouring into other people and helping them. Therefore, you should be able to be comfortable and afford certain things that will make your life, feel like this is worth doing it. And then also thinking about there's a certain amount of giving back. Because as we were saying, you could have been in a situation where I have no idea what to do about fraud, but then at that time you had a Roots to Fruits who you can call to say, okay, this is how you can navigate outside of that, then that would be helpful. But then that doesn't mean that everyone needs to be a charity. You can think commercially, because the excess that we would have within like charging a certain price and then it only costs this, therefore you've got a profit, we can use that to reinvest in other people. So I think it's just thinking of, I love the harmony. I think that might be the theme of today.
It's not my original. I actually picked this up at a networking event.
It's right now your original. You brought it here.
But it's so true, right?
That you're passing it on. That's the whole point.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I think it's less of, I know, because religiously there's so many messages within religion, and you can pick one, to be honest, because one could contradict the other within the same passage. So it's also you sitting down and like just thinking about what works well with your life, and we don't have to suffer. I don't think that's the idea. We're meant to prosper and help others prosper too.
I love that.
Okay, so I'm going to go all religious right now.
We're here for it. We're here for it.
She said, so the guy with his master and the servants, right? And he came back to say, this is what I did with the money you gave to me. And he entrusted more to him because he came back with fruits, right? In the beginning, God said, I feel like a pastor.
We're in Genesis, guys. We're in Genesis. We're going
He said,
there.
be fruitful and multiply. And what's the word? Something the earth, right? And for us individuals, like different people, she said, how much is too much? As much as I need to get to make myself comfortable, people around me comfortable, and be able to give back, that is fine. I don't think a lot is too much when you are within the morals of, you're not being greedy with funds, you're not being obsessive, that you do things you normally wouldn't do. And when I say normally, with negative stuff, and you can decide what's negative to you, right? Things that you
will
normally
compromise.
Exactly. Or that would be like, this is not Joy, this is not Evelka, this is just completely different. Then what cost you to do that? Right? So when it's kind of like out of who you really are, it's not comfortable for you or people around you, then you start thinking, okay, you're making that decision and it's wrong, then I'll say that it's too much. But when I had to make money to get the things I want to do, like get things for myself and things that I want to do around me, then I think it's just fine. Like there shouldn't be a limit to the amount of money you want to get. there should, especially when you're within that, should I say, the morality of things, when it starts getting out of focus and then you're behaving differently, then it's
or harming other people. Like
people.
You have excess, but out of someone else having nothing left.
So then you need to call yourself to order, right? And for me, I'm grateful to my mentors because they gave me that exposure to say, you should be able to reach for what you want. There shouldn't be that limit to say, you cannot have this, you cannot have that. As long as it's helping the bigger picture in the end, then I can reach for it. When I am beginning to tell myself, should I be doing this? Or like you said, why should we always lean towards that poverty mindset? Where we feel like we're asking for too much. Why can't I ask for it? The highest I'll get is a no. Right? The highest I'll get is a no, or like the door is shut. And then I go back to actually retrace my stress. I'm like, okay,
that
how
door
else?
wasn't for me anyway.
Then I start thinking, how else can I get it? So if it's not for me, then how can I think through this issue and correct my steps and achieve it another way? So they're like, God, when someone shuts the door, God opens a window. So if this door didn't work for me, maybe it's not for me. But okay, so how do I start thinking about it in a different way? And then I go through the window and I'm like, I'm in here. So what do we do next? Right. So I think for me, I would say like a lot. How much is a lot? Oh, I can't remember the statement.
How much
is too much? Right. I think there's no clear answer to that except when you start behaving or doing things out of like who you really are. Then it's funny. Then you call yourself to order. Or why should we not lean towards where we're wanting too much money? Why should I lean into staying poor?
Staying poor.
And having that poverty mindset. No, because poverty mindsets keeps you in like a particular position or a different, like that's
and you're
just
not helping
you're not helping yourself, you're not helping the next person,
you're
also not even helping the people around you, like your close, your family, your kids, your husband, or whoever it is, right? I want to lean on this side and then I tell myself, Joy, it's too much, go to the middle, man, or whatever. But as much as possible, I know it's not a not everybody has that confidence and not everybody has that endurance or strength to say, I don't want to stay on that side of things, but open your mind.
I mean, especially if you're a business, if like running a business, right? So like, how do you set your price as well? There's a really great article that I read, but I can't remember who wrote it and where it was, but then they were explaining how if you're leaning towards charging cheaper prices to try and help people, and like you're actually underpricing yourself, actually they see your value as less than what you can provide because you've priced yourself down. But actually, if you price yourself accurately, or even if you were ambitious, you'll find the people that have a budget to be able to pay for that ambitious
and be competitive
price. Exactly.
And if you price cheaper, when you want to increase, it's harder. Because they have already, you formed the mindset of the people that are paying money for the cheap stuff. So it's hard for them to now think about you in that
higher
scaled version. Right. So I like what she said about make yourself, show them you have that value equal to the amount of money you're charging, because tomorrow when you actually develop yourself to be much better than you, they are able to see, okay, there's a big difference, I'm going to still pay that price because yes, she has what she says she has. It's the same thing for individuals.
I was just thinking about when you're negotiating pay salaries and things like that, and you know, some people will take kind of the bare minimum, but then when it comes to performance reviews and, you know, asking for more, they're just like, well, actually you've been doing so well with this level, we think that you know you're maintaining that level. And it's harder to, not in every case, but it's definitely harder to kind of work your way up kind of the salary band when, you know, some people just expect a bare minimum from you. And I'm not saying that's for everyone and every organization, but there are some people who found it harder to climb the corporate ladder, for instance, because other people have seen them at a certain level.
And I love the culture now. Jump around,
Oh,
move.
let me tell you, throughout my career,
Yes.
I haven't stayed at a company longer than two years.
I've seen that. A lot of people do that, yeah.
I will not. And, you know, back then people were just like, yeah, stay in a company for 10, 15 years. Good for you.
It works for you,
Not
fine.
happening for me, because
Yeah.
I actually realized, even in my career from uni to now, while I'm still working full time until Cohesia Connects become in the millions.
Yes.
We're manifesting here.
2024.
Yes. I've literally, as every job I had, I increased every single time. So when
Like
I
a
look
decent percentage, I'm
a
guessing.
decent,
Yeah.
now I'm literally probably, I've more than doubled from my first ever salary when I started working in corporate. I've more than doubled that to now. And I'm just like, imagine if I had just stayed in a company for like 5-10 years. It's going to be so much harder for me to work the way up than if I just go to another company who's seen a value and I've negotiated based on what I can bring. And, you know, I was one of those people that I was just like, maybe I shouldn't ask for more. When I asked for more, I got more than what they actually bargained. I got more than what they actually had advertised. And I'm just like, I'm going to get used to this asking for more. It's okay to ask for more, or it's okay to be on that. It's okay. What's the phrase that you said again?
Harmony?
Not harmony, but it's okay to have that too much. Is it too much? What did you say? Sorry.
How much is too much?
How much is too much?
Yeah.
And it's okay to, you know, look at what that too much is for you, and that's very individualistic.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just like, well, I'm going to get on the upper end, and if you can't afford that, then that's okay.
But
You ask
there's
somebody
someone-
else.
You ask
there's
someone
a company that is willing to
So-
pay you
Exactly.
more because they
100%.
see your value.
Value.
But what not to miss out here is actually then show up and do the job.
Yes.
100%. Have integrity
Yeah.
with the work that you do.
Yeah.
And when we look at morals, it's all about integrity. It's all about compassion. It's how are you going to use your skill in that new environment, that new career, that new business venture for the good.
And just be excellent.
Yeah.
If you're going to do,
Excellence.
just be excellent, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like you are worth the value that you are, have a right to be competitive about, but also like do that thing then.
Yes.
Do it. Don't think like, what can I shortchange to get more? Because that's still from
Exactly.
a selfish
That's-
heart intention.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're looking at heart postures here. If we really think about the morals versus morals, like where's your heart at with it? What's the real like agenda behind it? And that's
Yeah.
really something to kind of consider moving forward.
Yeah.
I would say though, we're gonna probably continue talking for
We
ages.
could talk for ages
But it'll
on
be
this.
so good to have just maybe some final words
Yes.
of advice from the both of you. What would you, if someone else was coming to this conversation and came across it, and I think we've touched on so many amazing
Oh, gosh.
things. There's been so many incredible drops of wisdom, which I can't wait to go back and listen to myself from the both of you.
Me too.
A piece of advice or encouragement that you would leave to young women coming up in this era, and how they should feel about the relationship towards money and finances and success.
Oh yes. Okay, so leaving tips or lessons maybe from everything we've discussed or just from life is to research, I think, first of all, if you feel unsure about something, and understand that we all feel unsure as well, even though
Yeah.
if you come across like really confident, we all have had a moment of I don't know what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah,
So
so good.
do some research. We've got so much information now,
Yeah, yeah.
so many templates, so many people that you can call as well. So that'll be good, and leaning into your network, but take that time to actually sit down and understand what. Okay, we've talked about relationship with money. What is my relationship with money? Let me sit down and ask myself certain questions like, do I feel triggered when something happens, and do I go shopping if that happens? Or if I have a question from my bank, am I scared to answer it? Or just sit down and figure out, well, what is my relationship with money? There's so many books that are available that can help you navigate that as well, like The Psychology of Money. You can get some information from there to try and pinpoint where do I sit, and then go from there. That's a great
Amazing.
place to
I love
start.
that.
I love
Thank
that.
you so
Thank
much. That's
you.
so good.
So 2 things from me. Don't limit yourself to what you can achieve or ask for. Right? Be open-minded to ask for what you actually want because
Yes.
you have that value to offer. Second thing is, like Arlyne said, do your due diligence. Inform yourself, educate yourself on the different issues, because you'll be surprised at who is out there to help and give you the answers that you're actually looking for.
Yeah.
And yeah, be confident, because being confident gives you the, should I say, the open-mindedness to actually reach for things that you feel like you don't deserve, but you do deserve them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it from me.
Love it.
Amazing.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you both for joining us on
Thank
the
you for
podcast,
inviting
and
us.
you know, having an experience for us to do this in person, because I can definitely feel the vibe, and I'm
Too much
soaking
vibe,
in.
Abel.
I'm
Too much
soaking
vibe.
in everything, all the knowledge. I feel like, yeah, I'm gonna go home and do some homework.
Same.
Me too.
Honestly,
And
same.
work
Yeah.
on my mindset even more, because
sure.
it's never an end
Yeah.
to our learning. So thank you both for coming,
thank you so
and
much.
yeah, I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you.
stay in touch.
Thank you for
Thank
inviting
you.
us.
Yeah.